how exactly does one lose a planet? Humanity's lack of foresight has always been its greatest weakness, and that weakness demonstrated itself in full force with the colonization of EDN 3. In their rush to colonize a new world after the demise of Earth, humanity failed to realize the dangers of the frigid planet. But for a time, life flourished. Homes and cities were constructed, and new families were made. And then, one day, the Akrid attacked. Hostile alien life forms indigenous to EDN 3 that range from small, crab-like monsters to towering snow worms. Orders were given to evacuate the planet, but only a select few were actually deemed worthy enough for evacuation, leaving thousands behind to fight for survival in the frozen wastes. In their flight from EDN 3, humanity discovered that the Akrid housed a powerful resource in their bodies that can change the fate of humanity. Thermal energy. This orange, goop-like substance is the lifeblood of the Akrid, and can only be harvested from their cold, dead bodies. Determined to harvest this new resource and reclaim the planet, humanity developed new weapons and returned to EDN 3 in a second colonization. Lost Planet picks up during the second colonization with protagonist Wayne Holden and his fellow colonists as they explore an abandoned domed city left over from the first colonization. Armed to the teeth with extreme survival gear, powerful weaponry, and mechs known as vital suits, the colonists fight Akrid that have made this place their new home. Even with this preparation, the colonists are overwhelmed by the Akrid, and the situation becomes even worse when a massive Akrid known as the Green Eye appears and tears through the city. Our forces scattered, our father Gale sacrifices his life so that we can escape the city, but with our vital suit running low on thermal energy, we don't make it far, and we crumple in the snow, trapped in our VS, doomed to become one with the frozen landscape. This is Lost Planet. In this review, we'll go through the story and gameplay of this 2006 classic to see what aspects are worth a revisit in our modern times. Get ready. You're about to embark on a journey to a new frontier of snow and ice. The main gameplay of Lost Planet is somewhat unique, even up until today. A lot of games publications talk about Lost Planet as an action-packed third-person shooter. While this is true, it both under and oversells what Lost Planet is really about. Strangely enough, it might be easier to compare Lost Planet's gameplay to something like Sonic. Now, how does that comparison help us? Well, the first idea is the perspective that both of these games have on their enemies. In many modern shooters, enemies are mainly just a danger that you must eliminate, where one wrong move on higher difficulties results in a quick death. However, Lost Planet's Akrid and human enemies function both as obstacles and as assets, and that all comes down to the thermal energy mechanic. True to the intro of Lost Planet, thermal energy serves as the lifeblood of every enemy in Lost Planet, including the player. It can be harvested from killed enemies in large, goopy pools that combine in a number counter in the upper left of the screen. Thermal energy performs a similar function to the rings in Sonic, in that they act as an extended life gauge. So long as Wayne has some amount of thermal energy, his health will replenish when he takes damage, and drain an amount of thermal energy in return. Thermal energy also acts as a kind of timer, slowly ticking away over time, influenced by difficulty, resulting in Wayne's death if he runs out. Thermal energy is also used to power special weapons, like the energy and plasma weapons, as well as the vital suits throughout the game. Vital suit abilities drain thermal energy even faster, and more advanced VSs also have the same effect. The thermal energy mechanic puts focus on quick and efficient gameplay, prioritizing quick kills to gain thermal energy and careful usage of resources like vital suits and energy weapons. It feels very rewarding to quickly beat a level and see a massive score at the end of all the thermal energy you managed to collect. Lost Planet's movement also feeds into this kind of careful yet fast-paced gameplay. Lost Planet's characters and creatures animate in a very similar way to those found in Capcom's Monster Hunter games. By this, I mean that there is no animation canceling in Lost Planet, so every single action, like reloading or dodging or even turning, has some level of investment. As such, like with thermal energy, the player's actions must be carefully used and timed, or they can be caught in a brutal stun lock from enemies. The Akrid design also reinforces careful and selective gameplay. Each Akrid has certain weak spots that must be targeted to kill them. These can be a single spot on the back, like on the Dongo Akrid, to several, like on the Cryatus, where targeting the ones on its legs can immobilize it and make it more vulnerable. This adds an additional layer to Lost Planet's gameplay, as each player must decide what weak spots to target. The safer options that can still kill the Akrid but slower, or go more aggressive to kill them quickly but also with an added risk. The grappling hook that Wayne has can also support a more aggressive playstyle, as while it can be used to quickly traverse the environment, it can also attach directly onto Akrid, allowing you to deal heavy damage to their weak spots, especially when you have a weapon like the shotgun. The human and vital suit enemies unfortunately lack this kind of interactability and decision making. Instead, the focus is more on dealing massive damage quickly. With human foot soldiers, going for headshots is the most effective way to deal with them. Weapons like the sniper rifle and plasma sniper can make human enemies jokes, as both weapons are perfectly accurate and have high magazine and excess ammo storage, and a headshot from each is enough to instantly kill them. The VS enemies are a little more interesting, as they can make use of different abilities to outmaneuver Wayne, and can use a varied arsenal of powerful weapons. The best play is to arm your VS with rocket and grenade launchers, or if on foot, use the smaller rocket launcher and spamming grenades. Certain enemies use the GTT-01 Vital Suit, the most basic one, or sit in turrets. These are slightly more interesting, as well-placed headshots on the exposed operators ejects them from the VS, leaving them vulnerable and allowing you to use the VS. As a whole, Lost Planet isn't a very difficult game to beat, but because of these mechanics, the game is more about having clean runs while playing it, utilizing all of its mechanics to the max. Lost Planet also has 12 bosses, about one for each level, and differing in various degrees of difficulty, but we'll get to those. First, let's discuss the story. Lost Planet's story is also fairly arcadey in that it serves as more of a way to transition between missions, though with that being said, it still remains a fun and interesting story. It's at this point in the review that if any of these mechanics or the gameplay that you've seen on screen even seem somewhat interesting, I encourage you now to go and play the game and then come back to this review. As from this point forward, we'll be going into spoilers of the story, a full breakdown of everything that happens. And so if you'd like to experience all of that completely fresh, I encourage you to maybe either go pick up a copy of it on eBay. They're fairly cheap, thankfully, or go to Steam. Although one thing that I'd like to point out right now, and an issue that I encountered in this review, is that since Lost Planet is an older game, a lot of the older PC copies that you might get on a CD will have you going through games for Windows Live. There are workarounds to get around that. Thankfully, if you use the Steam version, you don't have to deal with any of that crap. Another issue is dealing with the DirectX 9 versus DirectX 10 versions of the game. On Steam, I tried DirectX 10, and depending on whatever boss I faced that day, the game would just crash and I couldn't move past. So I ended up switching to DirectX 9, had no issues there. So maybe that'll help you. Anyway, moving on to the story. Though our fate was seemingly sealed in that frozen vital suit, we later awake to find ourselves in a warm bed with a strange device in our arm, sucking in thermal energy. By our bedside is a white-haired man named Yuri Solotov, who is quickly joined by his two friends Rick and Luca. After introducing themselves to Wayne, they ask him if he's able to recall anything about his past. Wayne struggles, but sees a quick flash of green eye and is taken back to the moment his father was killed. Other than that, he can't remember anything else. Lacking his memory and a home, the three take Wayne in and put him to work setting up data posts. Over the course of his time with the three, Wayne learns that they are snow pirates, a diasporic group of people that descended from the original colonists left behind after the evacuation. The snow pirate groups range from small bands, like the one Wayne is now a part of, to raiding bands of hundreds, all of which are fighting for survival against the elements, the Akrid, and each other. Wayne also learns that Yuri's group wants to eliminate Akrid hives one by one in order to eradicate them from the planet, making survival easier and making terraforming the planet an easier prospect. Wayne, with his experience in combat and knowledge of how to pilot a VS, volunteers to take out a nearby Akrid hive. And now we begin our first mission. Within a few seconds of the first mission, we get our hands on our first VS, the GTT-01 Vital Suit. As stated previously, this is the most basic VS, acting as little more than a heavy weapons platform and draining our thermal energy supply faster. It's honestly easier to leave this one behind, as we quickly reach a parking garage where it can't fit through anyway. Along the way, we encounter Akrid, the tripod-like Sepia, and the towering Cryatus. With some quick gun work and solid use of our grappling hook, these prove no issue. Pushing forward, we quickly turn more Akrid into frozen icicles and suck up their orange goop. The Dongos are the next Akrid we meet. Large roly boys that we have to circle behind and blast their ass to kill. They aren't too threatening on their own, but having several together, especially in an enclosed space, can make them a real threat. As we make our way up a cliff face, we have to watch out for these things as they roll downhill. However, we can use the terrain against them, as dodging them once sends them tumbling all the way down the cliffside. We can also use nearby rocks to cause damage to them, but we also have to be careful not to be crushed ourselves. Reaching the top, we come to the mouth of a cave, and are immediately greeted by several Trillid, fragile flying Akrid that swarm in groups and dive down to attack Wayne. Thankfully, a couple of bullets is enough to kill them, but most of the time, they can be safely ignored as they are easy to dodge and don't drop that much thermal energy as a reward. We enter the cave, and see that the inside is sprawling. Across the cavern, we can spot the Akrid hive. The only thing between it and us are several Trillid and a few Sepia. Blasting through them and their Ganessa hives, we enter our first boss arena. The boss, the Godon, is a supersized dongo that rolls around the arena in an attempt to flatten you. It can also make use of its front mandibles to try to take a bite out of you if you stand in front of it. Higher difficulties can add several dongo to the room, and on professional difficulty, the highest, you must face the Godon without a vital suit. Like its smaller brethren, the only real way to cause damage to the Godon is to blast its weak spot on its tail. It is also susceptible to being stunned by explosives when it rolls, but this can backfire, as it keeps some momentum and can crash right into you, dealing massive damage. Overall, the Godon is a fun introduction to Lost Planet's boss fights, as it keeps mechanics learned from previous enemies, and switches them up slightly, creating a fun and engaging enemy to conquer. Impressed by Wayne's success at clearing out the Akrid hive, Yuri asks him if he'd be willing to take on a rival snow pirate group called the Crimson Unity. Brick explains that a previous encounter with the Crimson Unity left many of their members dead, and led to their trailer being stolen. Lucas says that having that trailer back would make it much easier to take on more Akrid hives. Wayne accepts the challenge, which brings us to our second mission. Our fight against the Crimson Unity begins as we look for their base, which must be in a location difficult enough to reach so that larger Akrid can't threaten it. We begin making our way through an abandoned city, one that must have been quite beautiful at one point, as we can see an arch that somewhat resembles the Brandenburg Gate. Reaching a clearing, we are ambushed by several pairs of Dongo, creating a rolling chaos that is quite fun to avoid. As we proceed further through the city, we come across our first human enemies, snow pirates from the Crimson Unity. This means we must be getting closer to their base. As explained previously, these human enemies are extremely easy to deal with, and the limitations of the human AI are easily seen in this level. We get access to VSs, rocket launchers, and later on, over 100 rounds for the sniper rifle. The human AI also has a limited aggro range, low accuracy, and low damage. Both of these combined makes these guys less than a threat and more like walking weapon and thermal energy supplies. Slaughtering our way through these idiots, across a bridge and through some tunnels, we finally reach the Crimson Unity's base. We're faced with a couple VSs, some missile turrets, and a handful of the cannon fodder foot soldiers. Making use of the sniper rifle, we can eject the VS pilots and quickly eliminate them, pick off the human enemies in range, and then circle around and kill the turret pilots. Once all enemies are eliminated and all goodies grabbed, we can head into the second boss arena. This boss is less interesting than the Godon. We are faced initially with a handful of Crimson Unity foot soldiers and 2 VS enemies. Quickly dispatching these brings out the real boss, another Crimson Unity VS that jumps around the arena and shoots rockets at us. There are no special weak spots really, or really a special attacks to dodge, so we simply send out our own rockets and quickly kill it off. Successful with this mission, Wayne returns with the stolen trailer. Inside, he discovers a Nevik PDA, a logo Yuri seems to recognize. At the same time, Wayne nearly passes out and receives a vision of his dead father, who explains that if his harmonizer, the device on his arm, doesn't receive a steady supply of thermal energy, he will die.
Left that way, it will start to affect your brain, and then death.
Wayne wakes up to find Luca demanding answers from Yuri about who he really is, and why Wayne's collapse demanded the use of their emergency thermal energy. It seems there are some secrets that Yuri keeps from the group, and now Wayne is in the middle of that crossfire. Undeterred, Wayne asks Yuri if he has another mission lined up, which he does. We begin the third mission just outside the Crimson Unity base, in search of the source of a large thermal energy signature that Yuri detected. Looting the immediate area and eliminating some Trillid, we come across a couple GTF I-3M vital suits. These VSs can switch between a walking mode and a snowmobile mode, and have a single attachment for a heavy weapon. It is tempting to use these neat VSs, but beware, these things are a trap. We'll see why shortly. Finished with our looting, we begin to leave the area and are faced with a wide snow plain, flanked on the left and right by a canyon and a large structure. Just before the plains, where we stand, are some small barrier-like structures. These barriers mark the beginning of the Undeep's territory. What's the Undeep? This is the Undeep, and hence why the VSs from earlier were a trap. Any VS that crosses these barriers is immediately destroyed by the Undeep, wasting a huge portion of our thermal energy. As noted before, the Undeep is one of the bosses where you might encounter issues with your DirectX version. Up until this point, I had played on the DirectX 10 version, but as soon as I encountered the Undeep, I was faced with unavoidable crashes, and it took some searching online to figure out that switching my version to DirectX 9 would fix the issue. So, something to keep in mind once again. We must proceed on foot. We can kill the Undeep, should we so choose, carefully avoiding its rock blasts, snow blasts, and insta-kill bite attack, all the while taking out the orange spots on its sides. This will take a while, however, as our munitions are limited, we can't use a VS, and we can't get hit too often due to our limited thermal energy. It is far easier and more time convenient to ignore the Undeep. Stay away from its mouth and avoid its rock blasts as we slowly and carefully make our way across the snowy plains. Finally reaching the end, we take cover in a destroyed warehouse. Seemingly safe, we discover the destroyed husks of Crimson Unity VSs and several dead snow pirates. Quickly taking cover, Wayne spots a Spider VS walking away in the distance, and looking closer, spots the Nevik logo on its backside. Yori warns him to get away, as Nevik doesn't take too kindly to snow pirates, but Wayne ignores him and gets close. As soon as he does, he's ambushed by a mysterious woman in a custom VS who warns him to leave. Refusing, she opens fire on Wayne, and he makes a mad dash for a nearby vital suit to fight back. Taking control, we make the mad scramble to the VS, and we quickly jump to avoid our enemy's attacks. This VS boss is slightly more interesting than the last, as our foe has several attacks we must avoid, with the most deadly being the quick plasma laser attack, which quickly sweeps the arena. The arena itself is fairly small and claustrophobic, so we have to make good use of our jump to avoid her attacks. Our enemy can also dash quickly to avoid our own attacks, so we have to keep up the pressure if we want to defeat her. Defeat her we do, forcing her to retreat in a cloud of smoke, leaving Wayne to wonder just who attacked him. Returning to the trailer, Wayne finds Yuri speaking to two Nevik soldiers who mentioned something called the Frontier Project. Wayne is surprised, since Yuri previously stated that Nevik was intent on wiping out snow pirates. But Yuri explains this away by stating that both their groups share the same goal, to make EDN 3 a safe place for humanity to live. He explains that Nevik's Frontier Project is an undertaking to terraform EDN 3 into a green paradise. Wayne dismisses this idea because it would be an incredibly long undertaking, but Yuri states that he has done extensive research on how to quickly terraform the planet. The fourth mission sees us start in a small ravine, with several sepia quickly spawning in front of us. We can grapple onto some ledges on the sides, which is a wise choice, as soon a couple dongo come rolling into the area we were in previously. We can make use of several loose rocks to damage the dongo or to destroy the nearby Ganessa nests, making it easy to clean up the remaining sepia. Proceeding a bit further, we are met with more sepia, but we also see an ominous shadow of something above us, and looking up, we see several egg-like objects falling toward us. Making contact with the ground, they explode, and if we look up quick enough, we see a giant moth-like Akrid dropping these on us. This is the Wendega, and the most we can do against it at the moment is to take cover deep within the mountain to avoid its bombs. We descend into a sepia-filled room packed with explosives and turn these three-legged flowerheads into more of our precious orange goop. Going deeper into this mountainside facility, we encounter more snow pirates, ones that are dressed in some kind of mining gear, perhaps leftovers from when this facility was active. We make use of our explosives to destroy their VSs, and are quickly joined by Akrid that flank the snow pirates, making them easy pickings for us. Proceeding further through the facility, we come to an open cliff face with a lift going along the edge of the mountainside. Jumping on the lift, the Wendega gives us a flyby, which can distract from the fact that our lift is falling. We must quickly jump to a small ledge to our right and proceed forward that way, otherwise we'll fall to our death with the lift. There are a few Trillid flying around, which aren't much of a threat. But we also get introduced to the Gellan Akrid. These Akrid can be extremely dangerous, especially in close quarters, as they explode when killed, or if they get too close to the player. This can also be useful if there are any other Akrid nearby, even other Gellan, as their explosions can cause splash damage to them as well. If Wayne wants to avoid these explosions, there is a weak spot on the underside of the Gellan, which can be shot to immediately turn them to ice. Reaching the end of the cliff face, and entering another old mining facility, we get our hands on the GTB-22 Vital Suit, probably one of the most fun VS's for me. This suit is all about jumping around, as it is fast, has a double jump, and even a charging super jump to get to some hard to reach places. It also has a smokescreen ability, but I don't think this has any impact on the AI enemies. It also looks like the smoothest VS ride, as some of the others just look rough. We use our new VS to blast up through this old mining facility, which consists of various platforms that are conveniently within our jump range, all while carefully dispatching or avoiding the Gellan floating down from above. Once we reach the top, we narrowly avoid a rock slide, which blocks the route back. The only way forward is to continue up. Charging the 22 super jump, we leap upwards into another boss arena. This boss is the Rybion, one of the more interesting and difficult fights in the game. The Rybion is a fast, flying Akrid that resembles a wasp. We must blast its stomach to deal damage, which is difficult to do, especially with our rockets, as it swoops through the arena. We also have to avoid attacks, such as when it launches several explosive projectiles at us. These can be shot, causing them to explode harmlessly away from us. The Rybion will also try to stab at us with its stinger, which must be quickly jumped over to avoid. Reaching low health, the Rybion will become much more aggressive, not staying in one place for much more than a second and spamming us with multi-directional rock blasts. This fight can be quite difficult, and this was the closest I came to dying during one of these fights, except for one later that we'll get to. After slaying the Rybion, Wayne returns to the trailer, only to find that Yuri has vanished. He suspects that Yuri went to join Nevik, but doesn't voice his concerns to Luca or Rick for some reason, fueling Luca's distrust for Wayne. Despondent, Luca feels that the only thing they can do is keep destroying Akrid hives, slowly making their way to the Green Eye. Wayne's next mission takes him back to the mountains. We begin on the edge of a steep mountain face, with small ruins jutting out of it, giving us somewhere to grapple onto. We climb our way up, blasting sepia that leap down at us, and dodging falling boulders that can send us tumbling down the mountainside. In addition, the giant Wendega returns, and each flyby creates a giant gust of wind, which we have to take cover to avoid, or risk rolling down the mountain. Further up the mountain, however, we can get our revenge on the Wendega, as there's a VS laser rifle we can use to blast off its wings, and we can watch it freeze and smash into the mountainside. Reaching the top of the mountainside, we enter into a massive cave. Immediately, we are confronted with several dozen Trillid and the Rybi, smaller versions of the Rybian boss we faced earlier. The Rybi can shoot projectiles at Wayne, rush forward and stab him with its stinger. Quickly hopping into a nearby VS, we shoot at their stomachs and quickly take them out. If we're not careful, however, we are ambushed by the Skald, burrowing Akrid that launch explosive projectiles from their heads in an area around themselves. Though dangerous in close proximity, the Skald cannot move, so it's best to back off and attack their spiky heads. There are some more weapons and a few areas to get extra thermal energy at the bottom of the cave. And once geared up, we must proceed along the path curving along the outside of the cave. We encounter more Skult and Ryby, the latter of which we can shoot its wings off with our VS weapons. We also have to avoid some more environmental hazards like boulders and falling stalactites, or shoot them to use them against the Akrid. Going deeper into the cave, we come across a drop down point. Just like Silent Hill taught me, you always want to jump into a hole so we fall down into the next boss arena. Before us is the towering Queen Akrid, a massive version of the Cryatus Akrid we faced previously. We have to shoot off the Queen's front legs to get a shot at the weak spot on its head. Or there are some stalactites above her that we can shoot to cause damage. The Queen has some quick stomping and jabbing attacks that can be difficult to avoid, and it can also use a frost breath attack to catch us off guard. We can take cover from its various attacks behind rocks that fall from the ceiling, but these are single use, keeping us bouncing around the boss arena, dodging attacks and taking cover. Defeating the Queen, Wayne returns once again to the trailer, where he is greeted by Rick and Luca. Luca expresses her regret to Wayne for mistrusting him, and thanks him for staying with the group and taking on these dangerous tasks. In the middle of this heartfelt talk, the mysterious woman once again appears, and jumps out of her VS to talk face to face with Wayne. She demands they hand over Yuri, who she addresses by his last name, Solotov, because he betrayed her group, getting a lot of her people killed. Wayne, Luca, and Rick, of course, don't believe this about Yuri, and truthfully tell her that he isn't there. The woman, Basil, believes them, and realizes that he must have gone over to Nevik, who she claims he once used to work for. The time has come to take on the Green Eye. This mission sees us starting on the outskirts of the domed city in the ruins of a small town, crawling with Nevik soldiers. This ruined city has too many Nevik soldiers to be a coincidence, and is too heavily armed with various VSs and turrets, but at the moment we can't make anything of it. We fight through the narrow streets, careful to avoid the explosive blasts from the turrets and the rocket-wielding soldiers, before coming to an open clearing. Ominously on the other side sits the dome facility, where our journey began. Catching up with Wayne, Luca finds an odd-looking VS in the snow, which Wayne recognizes as his father's. He takes the time to fix it up, and then pilots it to face the Green Eye. We fly through the hallways of the domed city, passing through familiar halls of the intro cinematic and the first level, before coming face to face with Green Eye in the main city. Gale's VS is the most advanced VS that we'll pilot in the campaign, and as such has the most features. It has a fairly agile flight mode. It can use its booster rockets to skate along the ground, making it agile while maintaining the ability to shoot. It has a chainsaw melee attack and, most important, its movement is the least clunky and most agile of all the vital suits. This agility makes it extremely useful in the fight against Green Eye, as we must hop between each of its gigantic sides to blast several weak spots. In order to do so, we must pass in front of Green Eye, who will utilize stomps, a charging attack, and its frost breath to attack us. With each weak spot we destroy, Green Eye will become a little more aggressive, making him move faster and charge faster through the arena. It takes a while, but after some close calls, we were able to kill Green Eye and avenge our father. Or so it seems. Just as our battle seems to be over, and we celebrate with Luca, we are surrounded by and attacked by Nevik soldiers. Leading them is a man named Bandero, a man who has the most stylish hair I've ever seen and the maniacal confidence to support it. His Spider VS proves more than a match for Wayne's skills, and he destroys Gale's VS. Seeing Bandero face to face triggers a memory in Wayne, and he realizes what really happened on the day his father died. After Green Eye's attack, Nevik came and cleared out the stragglers. It's a bit unclear if Nevik controlled the Green Eye or simply used it as an opportunity to kill the colonists. Gale, bleeding out from the attack, is gunned to death by Bandero, who laughs at the slaughter. Wayne and Luca make their escape back to the trailer, which they find in ruins with no sign of Rick anywhere in sight. Both are forced to run away in the frigid snow on foot. A year passes. Wayne and Luca, having lost their base of operations, have turned their attention from destroying Akrid hives to attacking Nevik in guerrilla hit-and-run attacks. Nevik has ramped up their efforts to see the Frontier project through to completion, and I think we can be sure at this point that the project is anything but a benevolent attempt to terraform EDN 3.
Wayne, continue the fight. You must stop the project. It is connected to what you treasure most.
The seventh mission follows Wayne on one of these guerrilla attacks, as we sneak behind Nevik lines in a position just beyond the old Crimson Unity base. We're in a good position to pick off some Nevik soldiers, and we slowly make our way forward as we pick off their forces one by one. As we do so, we become more powerful, getting stronger armaments, grenades, and vital suits that we can utilize against Nevik. Reaching the end of the cliff face, we enter a small facility and find another snow trailer, seemingly brand new. This makes Wayne and Luke excited, as they can now have a new mobile base of operations and a new home. But there's also something unexpected here. Rick. After a year of being missing, both Wayne and Luca had given him up for dead. But here he is, putting new fuel into the trailer. Settling into the trailer, Rick explains that Basil helped him escape to this place. She had been hunting for Solotov, but realized that this Solotov was Yuri's father, not Yuri. Rick tells them that Basil hasn't returned from a Nevik facility near their location, and Wayne goes out in search for her. We return once again to the snowy plains beneath the old Crimson Unity fortress, this time at night. Don't worry, the Undeep is no longer here to torment us, even if we haven't killed it previously, but that doesn't mean that the plains are free of danger. Now, there are various respawning Akrid on the plains, with the Skull and Cryatus making return, but the Gor Cryatus is the standout Akrid of this level. The Gor Cryatus is a much larger, perhaps more mature version of the Cryatus that has thick skin over the weak spots on its arms and butt. We still have to target these areas if we want to kill it, but doing so is a much more difficult prospect. Because of its size, the Gor Cryatus' attacks also have a longer reach and damage, and it can shoot a molten boulder at us as well. As stated, the Akrid here will respawn, so it is important to move through quickly and grab what ammo and resources you can. There are also Nevik VSs patrolling along, and sticking around, we can watch them fight the Akrid. We can muck in when either side is weak for some free thermal energy, or let them fight and simply move past them. Along the opposite end of the plains, just before the storage facility where we first fought Basil, is a group of Nevik soldiers and a set of stairs. Fighting through these soldiers, being behind our VS and climbing the stairs, we enter through a doorway into the Nevik facility. Slowly creeping inside, we see that this place is infested with a couple dozen Nevik drones and a few snipers. The drones, at least in few numbers, aren't too dangerous. Their main gimmick is that they have shields protecting their eye, their weak spot. These shields only open when the drone is about to shoot, so we just have to have a quicker draw than they do to kill them. This area is just a bit annoying, as we need to catch the attention of a few at a time and retreat to deal with them. There are also a few we can get a good shot at there behind, killing them instantly. I think you could also sneak past these enemies, as there's a lot of cover and even a few divots in the more exposed areas of the facility, but I usually find stealth more boring. Beating the drones, we reach the other side of the facility and go up an elevator into the 7th boss fight. Our opponent is a spider mech, similar to the one Bandero used a year ago, sporting a cannon and a plasma repeater. Some drones will also come to assist, but they are no match for our VS. At times, the Spider VS will shift into tank mode and attempt to hit us with a drill, but jumping onto any of the raised platforms makes this attack completely useless. After defeating the boss, with the help of Basil, we were able to capture a Nevik technician named Joe, and through his PDA, learn of a geothermal facility that is supposedly critical for the success of the Frontier project. Still not any closer to knowing what the project really is, but desperate to stop it, we head into one of the cooler locations in the game with Joe as our prisoner. The Volcano Dome is exactly what it sounds like, a comically evil fortress situated right in the middle of a volcano. In order to reach it, we must cross through what is known as the canyons. Not long into our hot adventure, we meet a new Akrid, the scorpion-like Nagal. This neat Akrid can use its tail to sting us, an attack which can happen from an exceptionally long distance. But we can also attack its base to chop it off. The Nagal can also jump and glide long distances, during which time we can shoot it to stun it, getting a good shot at the weak spot on its stomach. It can also be easily flipped over with explosives like grenades. We also meet a variant of the Sepia, the Sid Sepia. These hot Sepia can leap forward to attack lane like their colder brethren, but they can also shoot hot boulders at him like the Gorkraitis. Thankfully, they are just as fragile as normal Sepia, so keep up the pressure and they should pose no threat. We also get our hands on the Spider VS, known as the Gab-25M. It comes armed with a cannon and a laser Vulcan, neither of which can be switched for other weapons. It can also switch between two modes, the Spider and Tank modes. In Spider mode, we have access to both its weapons and become a slow-moving weapons platform. In Tank mode, we can only use the cannon, but move quickly, and we can use the drill to attack anything that gets too close. We come to an old highway, where we are ambushed by several Akrid, consisting of the Flying Ryby, the Scorpion-like Nagal, and the Dongo, who use every opportunity they can to roll at us. It makes for a neat encounter, as we switch from Spider to Tank mode and back to utilize maximum mobility and firepower. Having cleared the way through the canyons, we return to the trailer. Wayne makes Joe a deal, show the group the way to the Volcano Dome, and he gets his freedom. He agrees, and heads to the front of the trailer with Luca to map out the way. Alone together, Wayne and Basil have a heart-to-heart. Wayne shows Basil his harmonizer, and tells her he got it from his father Gale. Basil explains that Gale once saved her life, and gave her her own harmonizer. Gale once worked with Nevik on the Frontier project, but eventually lost faith in Nevik, and created the harmonizer behind their backs. Her husband worked with Gale, and was betrayed along with him by Oven Salatov. Wayne wonders if the whole Salatov situation was just another lie Nevik created, and Basil realizes that she needs to find out more about Salatov, and Wayne's harmonizer. She also worries about Wayne because his harmonizer was left without thermal energy for 30 years, damaging it. Wayne expresses disbelief, but Basil states that Gale died 30 years ago. She explains that the harmonizer is the reason they are both alive and young enough to fight. The harmonizer delays aging. With this revelation, Basil leaves to continue her investigations, leaving Wayne confused but thankful for her help. We return to action along a highway, and are immediately confronted by some Nevik drones guarding a VS. We dispatch them, stock up on thermal energy, and climb on in. We are now properly in volcano territory as the sky rages red, lava pits spew dangerous spouts of molten rock, and flaming boulders rain down from the sky. In the distance, we can see the volcano dome sitting ominously over the landscape. There are various Nevik soldiers hidden around the area, and down below we encounter some spider mechs, but they are no match for us. Reaching the lower levels, we drop in some maintenance tunnels and follow them into the volcano dome, where we are greeted by some Nevik drones and some VSs. However, for being so close to the facility, resistance is light, and eventually we come to a wide open area. You know what this means. We quickly kill the two spider VSs creeping around, and this draws out the 8th boss, the Gab 250M. This behemoth of a VS is very similar to the smaller spider VSs, having the same Vulcan laser and cannon weapons, along with a drill it can use against us. It can also launch missiles and attack us with a slam attack. This boss saw me go through a couple VSs, but the ludicrous amount of thermal energy this level gives you makes this otherwise tough boss no threat. With the VS turned into scrap, we are suddenly confronted by a man with the biggest forehead I've ever seen. He nonchalantly congratulates us on our victory, calling it incredible how one man was able to take on Nevik. Luca warns Wayne that she can't detect any life signs other than him, so something is up. The man introduces himself as Dennis Eisenberg, the overseer of all Nevik operations on EDN 3. He begins to spout propaganda on how the Frontier Project will rid the world of the Akrid, and warns Wayne that any snow pirates that get in his way will be dealt with. He also alludes to the fact that he was the real reason behind Gale's death, for his opposition to the project. Eisenberg hopes that both he and Wayne can reach an understanding, and Wayne asks about the understanding that he apparently reached with Yuri. Eisenberg explains that Yuri was an extremely valuable asset, helping speed up the Frontier Project. Wayne picks up on the past tense, and Eisenberg claims that Yuri is simply taking a little rest, though he claims he hasn't killed him. Having had enough of Megamind's nonsense, he takes a shot at him, which ineffectually goes through him, and Eisenberg disappears. Apparently, he was just a hologram. At this point, Wayne and the crew are unsure what to do next. Their assault on the volcano dome didn't seem to have any serious impact on Nevik, and they have no other leads to turn to. Joe provides a lead, perhaps out of gratitude for his new freedom of a massive source of thermal energy back in the canyons. He claims that it could be used to help the Frontier Project, as there's enough thermal energy down there to power Nevik for years. With no other leads, the group decides to check it out. This is probably one of the most difficult starts that the game throws at us. Once again, we find ourselves on an old highway, darting through the canyons, and we are immediately confronted with a Nevik barricade. This area is full of well-positioned soldiers, snipers, missile turrets to our right, and down below, a couple of VSs. We have to be super careful not to take too many hits, as we don't have much thermal energy to spare this early on. Taking care of the barricade on the bridge, we can take some time and snipe some of the enemies down below, though the smoke from the missile turret shots makes this a difficult affair. At first I tried to snipe the turret operators, whose heads are quite clearly visible, but that didn't seem to work. After running out of sniper ammo, I decided to tackle the enemies below head on and make the leap. I kinda get blasted immediately, but some quick dodges and jumps get me into enough cover so that the turrets above can't shoot, and I sneak my way behind them, killing the operators one by one, and turning the missiles on the Nevik forces below. I then headed back down and stole a VS parked in a storage crate, or at least tried to, as I couldn't get it unstuck. I was slightly too tall. So I leapt out and deal with the remaining forces on foot. The plasma gun, the energy variant of the sniper rifle, makes the Nevik soldiers extremely easy to deal with, as any shot on their bodies is an instant kill. With all the enemies in the immediate area dead, we were able to stock up on a lot of thermal energy. Stealing the other VS from the storage crate, we backtrack through the canyons, encountering a few more Nevik VSs and soldiers. We also find that a lot of the areas that were previously filled with lava are now dry, perhaps as a result of our assault on the volcano dome. In one of the dry flow areas, we spot a way down. Abandoning the VS, we rappel down several small platforms, careful of the gelin and of the lava pit below. We get a spider VS, whose drill we use to clear a path ahead, drilling through a thick layer of rocks into a tunnel ahead. We encounter more Akrid, like the Scald, that pop up from time to time, or the Dongo and Godon Akrid, that become very dangerous with the claustrophobic tunnels. Eventually, the tunnels lead us into a more open area, with explosive sepia, called bull sepia, and gelin floating inside. Dealing with them from a distance, I look around some of the side areas for more thermal energy. One strange thing to note about this part of the level is that leaving it and returning causes the Akrid to respawn. Unlike with the snowplanes from earlier, I don't think this is a conscious design choice, but a bug. It also happens with some of the adjacent tunnels. Kinda odd, but not a big deal. Funnily enough, there are a few areas where the Godon respawn where they get stuck, and one even spawns rolling forever inside a storage container. It's like this area was the least polished by the developers, though I have no clue if it's part of the original game on Xbox or due to its port to PC. Going through some more tunnels, we find ourselves in another large area. To our left, before dropping down, we see a massive hole filled with spiderwebs. We should have learned our lesson from the Undeep, as a massive thermal energy signature means that a massive Akrid is in the area, and dropping down reveals this to be the case. We must now face off against the Tenkale, a towering, spider-like Akrid that spawns bull sepia from its giant abdomen. As we skitter beneath it, we must take out at least 2 of its legs to cause it to fall, and then shoot at the weak point on its top side. The Tenkale will quickly regrow its legs, so we must repeat this dance while avoiding its attacks. The Tenkale can shoot webs at Wayne, or it can stomp at us with its massive legs and mandibles, or even just fall flat on top of us in a slam attack. This fight keeps us looking up, which is dangerous as it can be easy to forget the explosive bull sepia that spawn in large hordes beneath the Tenkale. However, killing Akrid is no Herculean task for Wayne, or for us at this point, and we make another popsicle out of another of EDN 3's wild beasts. Just like with a green eye, we are quickly surrounded by Nevik soldiers, and Bandero once again makes an appearance, almost quite literally out of nowhere. Can he teleport? Anyway, Wayne experiences complications with his harmonizer, making it easy for Bandero to shoot him. Just as Wayne is about to be killed by Bandero, he is saved by Joe, who demands an explanation from Bandero. Apparently, the thermal energy signature was all a trap set by Joe to have Wayne captured, but he is shocked by Bandero's willingness to kill. Bandero smiles and laughs, and plays a transmission from Iceberg that reveals the true nature of the Frontier Project. It is true, it will cleanse EDN 3 of the Akrid, and terraform it into a green paradise, but it will also kill everyone on the planet, killing hundreds of thousands of snow pirates and Nevik soldiers unlucky enough to not be evacuated. Joe is shocked by this revelation, and escapes with Wayne, with Rick laying covering fire. As Wayne recovers, he fills Luca in on what he learned from Basil about his harmonizer, including the negative health effects it's had on him and his memory loss. Joe then comes in and apologizes to Wayne, reiterating that he had only wanted to rid the planet of all Akrid life, not human life. Wayne accepts his apology, and, realizing the severity of the situation, asks if there is a way to the Sky Elevator, the location where the Frontier Project will be set into motion, and like before, it will take us through an Akrid hive. We begin in an old subterranean underpass, with several large Negal Akrid skittering about the abandoned roadway. We take them out from a distance, and avoid fire from some automated turrets that Nevik must have placed there. Fighting along the road eventually brings us to the edge of a sunken city, its buildings built both into the rock and buried by it. We kill a lone Gorkraitis guarding the center of the city, and jump down through a hollowed-out building, avoiding the Jellin that lurk within its walls. Jumping into another hole brings us to the 10th boss, the massive tentacled worm known as the Scissor Rod. This boss is super easy, as we blast the tips of its 2 tentacles, which then retract into the ground. Getting out of our VS and following it in, we can attack them where they are vulnerable, destroying them. This then forces the Scissor Rod to attack us with its mouth, shooting various forms of lava from it in an attempt to kill us. The Scissor Rod becomes vulnerable during some of these attacks, as it opens its mouth wide, exposing its soft insides which we must attack, killing it. Walking through its corpse into a tunnel, we run into Joe. He hands us an enhancement for our harmonizer, which he received from Yuri while he was still with Nevik. At first, Joe explains he was wary of Yuri, but chose to trust him later on. Yuri was eventually detained and sent to a Nevik containment facility. Luca and Rick rush off to find him, while Joe and Wayne split up to take down the Frontier Project once and for all. We keep pushing ahead, the tunnels taking us out into a warehouse area where Nevik soldiers are facing off against various Akrid, including a Godon and a Gorkraitis. There is an EM laser lying on the ground. This weapon is extremely useful, as it deals high damage and temporarily shuts down enemy VSs. It can also be charged, dealing extra damage. We just have to be wary of it eating away at our thermal energy, but at this point in the level, we are well away from running out. Stealing a Nevik VS, we kill the remaining soldiers and Akrid before proceeding deeper into the facility. Looking around, we see dozens of unmanned vital suits of various types, along with many weapons and storage crates. All of these Nevik supplies must mean we are getting close to the Frontier Project, the main source of all of our trouble. We drop down a service elevator and confronted by Bandero, who has upgraded Gale's old mech with dangerous new weapons and Nevik armor. Bandero seems pissed at us and hints that Wayne's harmonizer is extremely powerful, with some sort of a relation to Gale's VS. But Wayne's done putting up with the two tails here and tells Bandero straight up that he's coming for that VS. The boss fight kicks off, and we have to dodge Bandero as he charges through the arena. This arena is made up of many pillars and lanes, and Bandero will charge at us. We have to dodge and attack him as he flies by. However, we can't stay in the open too long as Bandero's armaments will shred us. Dealing enough damage, we force Bandero into a second stage, where the pillars will shift around, making it difficult to stay in cover and get a good shot at Bandero. This fight was extremely close, with my VS only having a sliver of health left by the time the fight was done. This boss is probably one of the most fun human boss fights, as you have to stay mobile and dodge some extremely punishing attacks while punishing Bandero's bullheadedness. It's a fight that shows the differences between Wayne and Bandero, with Bandero's aggression and love of chaos being his undoing, while Wayne's careful use of his limited resources and inferior VS is what carries him through. It's a very fun rival fight. We kick Bandero's ass and we get one of the most badass cutscenes in the game. Crawling out of his destroyed VS, Bandero pulls his gun on us. Wayne, like the stone cold bastard he is, walks right up to Bandero's gun, but Bandero dies before he can pull the trigger. Basil catches up to us, telling Wayne that his hunch about Solotov is right. Neither Yuri nor his father were responsible for the death of her family. It was just a lie created by Nevik. We learn from Basil that Wayne's harmonizer and Gale's VS were made for each other, able to react in a certain way that will power up the VS. However, she warns that this reaction could have negative effects on Wayne, and he could lose his memory all over again. Basil stays behind to cover Wayne's attack on the Frontier Project, setting up a line of bombs to block the route. However, she's caught by Nevik soldiers while finishing getting them ready, and has no choice but to detonate them, killing herself and the Nevik soldiers. Wayne catches up with Rick and Luca, who found Yuri, but he's not looking good. It seems Nevik did more to Yuri than lock him up. They beat him half to death, perhaps because he knew too much about the Frontier Project. He stresses the importance of the harmonizer attachment, perhaps the whole reason he went over to Nevik in the first place, before he succumbs to his wounds. Wayne, realizing there's nothing more he can do for Yuri, gets back into Gale's VS, ready to end the Frontier Project once and for all, to honor the memories of the people who already gave their lives to see it stopped. We've reached the point of no return. Wayne puts the enhancement onto his harmonizer, and we're thrust into the last mission.
Just be careful. I don't want to lose anyone else. Come back to me.
With the enhancement in place, our VS starts to power up, new modules appearing and extending from within. And with our energy levels rising, Wayne puts the thrusters to full as we shoot up through the facility. Is at this point where our VS gains ahead and becomes a straight up Gundam. We test our new powers on some Nevik forces that come to stop us. The swords on our arms both can fire off waves of energy that can damage our targets. and getting in close with these attacks deals even more damage. We also have a plasma gun that can fire off a few volleys at distant targets. We can also ascend and descend, though the process is rather slow and awkward. Rising through the Frontier Project facility, we come face to face with Eisenberg, who is using his own souped up VS. This is it, the final boss. And in typical fashion for Japanese games, he's also the most difficult boss, though much of that comes down to how the fight functions rather than the boss himself being difficult. One of the first things I learned is that pretty much all of our range attacks do pitiful damage, at least at this difficulty, and are easy for the boss to dodge. They are only really useful in the first part of the fight, as later on they don't seem to do any damage at all. In addition, the two swords attacks we have, one for each arm, seem to do the same thing, despite having different animations. My first impression was that one would be a light and the other a heavy attack, but that did not seem to be the case. The boss starts with a homing laser and laser attacks, both of which are easy to dodge. As we deal more damage, these attacks ramp up, and he gains two turrets, one which fires lasers in a spread, and one that tracks us while firing in an up and down motion. At a distance they are easy enough to dodge, but because of our armaments, a distance is where we deal more damage. These attacks also deal high damage to us, with each one taking about a third of our health away. To top this all off, we still have our thermal energy counter, so a slow and steady route of picking off his health is out of the question. The best strategy I found was going right up to the boss's face and attacking with our sword attack. This attack stuns the boss, so right before he attacks, we hit him with our sword, stay in close range, and follow him as he goes around the arena. As he gets his turrets and uses them, quickly circle around him and attack as soon as they stop firing. That was eventually how I ended up defeating Eisenberg. The boss fight over, Joe manages to disable the Frontier Project and destroy the facility. As Wayne hears this, he begins to struggle as the effects of the harmonizer set in. He begins to lose his memory once again. And then he asks the forbidden question.
Who's Joe?
Through all of this, he sees a wounded Eisenberg crawling away from his destroyed VS and realizes he has to finish this before it's too late. They have a shoot-off, with Wayne taking several bullets before putting one in Eisenberg's massive dome. We're thrown once again a year into the future. Luke and Rick have taken over Yuri's research, his dream of having made EDN 3 into a green paradise. We see her as she drives around the snow plains, depositing small objects that act as waypoints for Rick, who shoots out several canisters that then deploy, turning the frozen snow into green grass. It's a small but important step in fulfilling Yuri's dream. If only he and Wayne were here to see it.
It's amazing. Wonderful. I can feel the warmth. You did all of this by yourself? I'm sorry. I just never expected to see dirt or grass here.
Are you?
Me? Well, I don't know what to say.
I'm sorry. How rude of me. My name is Luca. It's nice to meet you.
So, would I recommend Lost Planet? For coming out in 2006, I think Lost Planet's gameplay holds out surprisingly well. The thermal energy mechanic is an interesting and unique use of a point system, the VS combat is incredibly fun, and shredding through Akrid is incredibly enjoyable. I think if you can adapt to some clunky things like the movement and are able to get it for a reasonable price, then Lost Planet is absolutely a game worth sinking some hours into. If you've made it this far into the review, thank you. I'm Sketchy Witch, and thank you for watching my backlog review. Have a nice day. Basil stays behind to cover Wayne's attack on the Frontier Project, setting up a line of bloms? What the fuck is a blom? Having queered the way, queered. We sir here, what's that?